Welcome to Inside Cape Cod, the weekly public affairs program for the CODCOM radio group. Join me as we delve every Sunday morning into the important issues here on this wonderful place we call home.
Good morning, Cape Cod. You are listening to Inside Cape Cod. This week, I have State Senator for the Cape and Islands, Julian Cyr. How you doing today, Julian?
Good morning, Missy. Good to be with you.
So, Julian, we talked a few weeks ago about what the surge is and stuff like that, but now we're starting to head towards coming out of it a little more, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So, what will the lifting of the stay-at-home advisory look like?
So these are all good questions, and I should say there's a lot more that is still being figured out than is definitive. So the current orders under Governor Baker's executive orders continue the stay-at-home order and several other orders related to essential businesses through May 18th. So essentially a week more. Also expected on May 18th is a report from an advisory board that the governor pulled together to advise him and the state on reopening. So I expect on May 18th that we may see some additional sort of slight easing in certain areas, primarily related to outdoor activities or outdoor recreation. But likely what'll happen on around the 18th is more of a roadmap on what it'll look like when we're able to reopen and what benchmarks are need to be reached for us to reopen certain activities and industries. So, we, as of today, we have some preliminarily promising numbers looking at both morbidity and mortality. So, number of COVID positive cases and also number of COVID related deaths. They've been trending for several days in a downward trend, likely indicating that we're coming out of the surge, but risk really remains. And I think that, particularly if you look at other places that have opened up a little too quickly, they've seen a spike in cases. So this is something we have to proceed with utmost caution. But I think everyone's aware of that. The public health advisories and rules that we've got in place through May 18th, many of those are likely to be extended with then a roadmap for how we reopen.
Got it. So a little while ago, you and a few other organizations and people, you issued a guidelines for people who wanted to come to the Cape. And a lot of it says effective through May 18, but so is that just kind of, like you were saying, okay, let's stop on May 18 and really reevaluate, or is that really the hopeful date where things can kind of start going back to normal?
So the May 18th date is something that we're taking from the governor's orders. So in all the activities that I've been a part of, we've been really working to make sure that we take that we're taking public health information into account, and we're really taking our lead from the governor. So the specific guidance you referenced, this is guidance to seasonal residents, people who are likely coming here or may be coming here. This is the time of year when we begin to open up. And so a number of entities and organizations led by the region's hospitals, chambers of commerce, and the Cape and Islands legislative delegation, we all work to put out guidance that's effective through May 18th, because the governor's orders are effective until May 18th. So after May 18th, we just don't know what that's going to be. I do think it's really crucial that, as we, throughout this pandemic, that we're communicating with uniform, consistent information that puts public health first, and that's public health led. And so whether it's the seasonal guidance that was put out, the guidance rather for seasonal residents, or the work of the Cape Cod Reopening Task Force, we are trying as hard as we can to make sure that we are working in a unified, coordinated way to share information to make sure that people understand what the public health precautions they need to take are to keep themselves and their families safe and also to keep others safe.
Totally, yeah. So you mentioned the Cape Cod reopening task force. What exactly, what is that, and what are the kind of conversations in that looking like at this point?
So this is a collaborative effort between the Cape and Islands legislative delegation, so all the state representatives and myself as a state senator, along with the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce and Barnstable County, with partnership from Cape Cod Healthcare, municipalities, both town managers and also elected officials at the local level, and several other stakeholders. And our aim is twofold: to both save lives and also to save livelihoods. We feel it's crucial that we are communicating with one voice as a region, whether that's to the governor's advisory board on reopening and to state government on specific concerns, considerations, issues that we face as a seasonal community here on Cape Cod. And then most importantly, what information is going out to our residents, whether they be year-round or seasonal, and then ultimately information that goes out to visitors when visitors are able to come here. We're all working to speak in a uniform, with a unified voice, with a uniform message that people understand. Essentially, this is what we would call in public health speak risk communication. So we're trying to make sure that people have the information they need to keep themselves safe, their families safe, and to keep their neighbors safe too.
Awesome. That sounds like you guys are doing fantastic work. So
it's hard work, and it's such that you really try to make sure you get all the stakeholders around the table. We've also set up subgroups to look at various different industries and sectors and considerations, everything from childcare to the marine industries to restaurants to short-term rentals. So each of these different sectors have specific considerations. It's a lot of work, but we think it's well worth it to be coordinated in a regional way. Our residents and visitors, don't actually really distinguish between parochial town boundaries, right? The difference between Truro and Eastham, or Yarmouth and Mashpee. And so, most people just think of this place as Cape Cod. And so we want to be sure that public health information, guidelines are uniform across the region. We're taking our lead from the governor and his decisions, but making sure that we implement and get that information out in a uniform, consistent fashion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the last time we talked, we kind of covered what issues the hospitals were having with not having enough staff and definitely not having enough PPE at that time. That was, I think, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. So how are the local hospitals doing? Did they get the support that they needed? Are we on the right track? Are they okay?
So the region's hospitals, which is Cape Cod Healthcare, which has Cape Cod Hospital in Hyannis and then Falmouth Hospital in Falmouth, and then Nantucket Cottage Hospital and Martha's Vineyard Hospital. They've really done a remarkable job preparing for the surge. It seems by most indications that we've come through the surge here in the region, but those efforts have been Herculean. They were more than what I expected. Our hospitals are also, I've seen a significant loss in revenue at this time, and so that's sort of the next hurdle that they're facing, where Cape Cod Healthcare is going to have, and actually the Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard hospitals as well are going to have gaps in revenue, already have gaps in revenue of millions and millions of dollars. And so figuring out how do you provide essential healthcare services with such a decline in revenue is a steep challenge. But it's a real credit to our healthcare workers and our hospitals that we were able to meet the moment here on Cape Cod. We never came close from being at capacity in our beds, and all of that effort was tremendous. I think it served us well. I think we also need to be prepared to. we may need to employ these assets again. I think that it's likely that we'll see another spike in cases or another surge potentially this fall or winter. It could be sooner, and so that we're going to need to rely on our hospitals and our healthcare workers, now and in the future, so long as COVID-19 is present, and until either we have community immunity, which is going to be hard to achieve, or more likely a vaccine.
Absolutely. So you did mention that there is a possibility for another surge. Is that what's that all about?
So I want to make sure I'm deferring to public health experts here. And I do have a background in public health, but I'm not an epidemiologist, or I'm not a clinician. What's widely expected, though, is that we will see a second sort of round or surge in cases. This may behave actually like influenza, and having a season for that. This is information that's readily available both at the federal level from Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's a name we've all come to know, and also from our public health experts here in Massachusetts. I think what I know is that we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to adhere to the public health precautions, even as we begin to reopen. I think it's going to be possible for us to reopen initially in a limited way, and then more broadly, if we're able to adhere to public health precautions, to do that good risk communication that I was talking about. Mm-hmm. But I also know that we need to be vigilant, and until really there's a vaccine for vaccine for coronavirus, we're not out of the woods yet. And so the assets and resources that have been pulled together, in these last several months are going to need to be available through the duration of the pandemic.
Yeah. So I guess my next question is about our local economy. I know when we spoke last, it was way too soon to even begin to speculate what this summer season was going to look like. But I think a lot of local businesses are kind of collectively shaking in their boots because, like we were talking about, it's one of those things that the summer weeks, they're so precious. That's where we get most of our revenue from our seasonal guests and residents. So looking forward, how do the guidelines that you guys put forward for our seasonal residents, how is that going to help maybe the summer season?
So I think folks are very right to be anxious and uncertain about what this summer is going to be, whether you're a small business owner or an employee. So much of our economy here, and so many of the ways that people make a life here on Cape Cod and on the islands is is through our seasonal economy. And when you have a precious 8 or 12-week season, this is really tough. I think in a lot of ways we still are uncertain about what will be possible and what those rules for reopening are going to be. Again, we're taking our lead from the governor. So the governor, through this reopening advisory board, will be providing a roadmap for us, and then we're going to work in a regional way to essentially execute it and to communicate that out to the public. There's a lot, though, I think we just don't know. I do think it's safe to say that we can expect a muted summer season. And there's some real question about how much, being a place that hosts so many visitors all at once, what's the threshold of population intake we can, we can accommodate while keeping everyone safe. There's remarkable innovative work that's happening in almost every sector, particularly of our seasonal economy. And folks are trying to figure out how to reopen, and some are reopening, and that I really admire, and I think is going to be how we get through this. But the lack of certainty right now at this point is it's tough. It's certainly making people anxious, and I think that a lot of people are waiting, making some cautious preparations, hoping for the best, but also planning for a more difficult situation. And so that's what we know at this time.
So, is there anything happening on the legislative level for small businesses at this point?
So there's a lot of conversation about how do you support small businesses, which really, especially out here, is the bread and butter of our economy. There are several federal programs, including what's called the Payroll Protection Program, PPP. Some businesses have been able to access that. Some businesses have been able to access Small Business Administration loans. But the broad consensus seems to be that a lot of small businesses couldn't access them, and that the way that the federal small business assistance is structured currently is it really doesn't envision the needs of a seasonal community and a seasonal business. And so there's been a lot of conversation at the state level on what more we could do. The challenge we run into is resources and is money. So the state is expected to see a $5 billion drop in revenue in the coming fiscal year that starts July 1st. $5 billion out of a $43 billion budget is very substantial. That $5 billion budget gap is about, it's estimated, right? So we don't know exactly what it will be, but that's sort of the best guess. That $5 billion gap is about double what the revenue shortfall was during the Great Recession around a decade ago. So that's sort of the scale of the challenges that we're looking at. Now, of course, if we get assistance and help from the federal government, that could really change the conversation and would really free up some resources to help small businesses in a more innovative way. It's not just about money. We're also trying to look at various legislative changes or fixes that would, ease certain restrictions or provide some level of relief. But really, what small businesses and what families need is they need a paycheck. They need dollars coming in. And so a lot of what we'll be able to do is tied to the support we get from the federal level.
Totally. So I'm so sorry, Julian. Did you say 5 million or 5 billion?
I said 5 billion.
Wow.
Billion with a B.
Wow. That's a lot. So I guess
that basically means, Missy, about a 10% cut across the board in every sort of state activity. It's it's such a substantial gap. There's no sort of fat to trim when you get to that level, particularly when I talked about the needs of our hospitals. There's so much activity in government that we actually need more resources coming to hospitals, coming to bolster public health. Coming to help a myriad of entities and folks. Food insecurity is another example. So it's a real challenge to have such a shortfall and such large need.
Yeah, that sounds really stressful. Oh God. So I guess my next question is, if the state did need funding from the federal government, that is obviously on the side of our representatives for the national Congress and Senate. But do you happen to know will that be not an easy feat, but is that something that maybe the state can hopefully expect? Or do you think it's going to be kind of an uphill battle?
So we're optimistic that we're going to get some level of support. One, I have a lot of confidence actually in our congressional delegation and their ability to go to bat for resources, yes, in a broader scale, and then more specifically, whether it's support for seasonal businesses, whether it's supporting the ferry transportation between the islands, which is under some financial stress. And so, I certainly have a lot of confidence in Senator Warren, Senator Markey, Congressman Keating, and the entire delegation from Massachusetts. It is a bit of an uphill battle, considering particularly what, Mitch McConnell, who's the majority leader, has said in the press, and some other, I think, just uninformed things that have been said. A state like Massachusetts actually is in relatively strong financial shape to weather this sort of storm. We have over $3 billion tucked away into our rainy day fund, and this is like a time when you rely on those monies that you've saved away. We have a relatively strong, robust economy. But this help is crucial. And, this is not the time where we should be laying off first responders and teachers and making cuts to hospitals which get a lot of support from public pay. This is a time we need to be in investing and making sure that we're supporting the people who have really stepped up to the challenge and been on the front lines in combating COVID-19.
Absolutely. So, Julian, I am running out of time, unfortunately, but I wanted to make sure I left enough time to ask you if you thought there was anything that we missed covering or any final thoughts that you had.
I just would really, want to recognize that this is a tremendously difficult, uncertain time, that so many Cape Codders and Islanders, whether you make your life in our seasonal economy or you do something else, there's a lot of uncertainty there. We're working as hard as we can to bring all the sort of stakeholders to the table, whether it's the leadership in our legislative delegation, our hospitals and healthcare systems, our chambers of commerce, our local public health officials, and other in towns and municipal activities, to work hard to speak with one voice as a region to make sure that we're prioritizing public health in everything that we do, working to have a uniform, consistent message so that we're keeping people safe and providing some hope of being able to open up some economic activity when we can. And so this continues to be just a very challenging time. Want to encourage people to take good care of themselves, both their physical health and their mental health. And, we'll get through this, but this is going to continue to be very hard for weeks and months to come.
Absolutely. So, Julian, one last thing. If people do want to kind of look to see where that May 18 roadmap is going to be, or for any information, where can they go?
So you can visit senatorcyr.com/reopening. So that's senatorcyr.com/reopening. Also on social media, we've got a bunch of this information up there. And again, I think on May 18th, we should have some more information, and we'll keep going from there. But certainly rely on senatorcyr.com for this information. We've tried to make it a sort of one-stop shop for all your COVID-19 related inquiries.
All right, Julian, thank you so much for coming back on with me.
My pleasure, Missy. Thank you for having me. And you take good care of yourself.
You too.
Inside Cape Cod is the weekly public affairs program for the CODCOM radio group. Tune in next Sunday at 6 a.m. for more Inside Cape Cod.